They tell you that respect is power. They teach you to chase it, to speak a certain way, dress a certain way, perform confidence until people finally nod in approval. But here's the lie. The more you chase respect, the more it owns you. Respect is the easiest drug to get hooked on because it feels noble. It doesn't whisper greed, it whispers dignity. It makes you think you're building a name, when really you're building a cage. A cage made from everyone else's perception of you. Most men never notice when they're trapped. They think their calm politeness is strength. They think their good reputation means freedom. But freedom doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being unaffected. Because the moment you start editing yourself to keep the room comfortable, you've already traded power for peace. Picture a man at the center of attention, admired, praised, even envied. He smiles because it feels good to be needed. But deep inside, he knows the applause can vanish the second he breaks their expectations. So he stays predictable, polite, safe. That's not respect. That's performance. Respect, as the world sells it, is conditional. It's based on how well you fit into someone else's comfort zone. True power begins when you stop needing to be understood inside anyone's comfort zone at all. When a man detaches from approval, something strange happens. People start sensing a different weight in him, an energy that doesn't beg to be liked. They don't know what changed. They just feel it. They talk softer around him. They measure their words, because somewhere inside they realize this man is not waiting for permission. That's the real game. Power doesn't come from being respected. It comes from not needing respect to act. The man who understands this becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is magnetic. When people can't read your hunger, they start to project their own fear, admiration, even fascination onto you. Most men try to earn respect through gestures, louder voices, longer speeches, visible dominance. But the strongest men make people feel respect without demanding it. Their calmness feels like threat and safety at the same time, because respect, in its pure form, isn't something you get. It's something people give up when they sense your self-containment. So, stop chasing admiration. Study it. Observe how quickly people hand it to whoever doesn't ask for it. Understand that it's not about being seen. It's about seeing through. The illusion of respect was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be used. And once you understand how fragile it is, you can finally stop chasing the illusion and start shaping the truth beneath it. The quiet, calculated gravity known as silent authority. Silence unsettles people. They fill it with explanations, nervous jokes, noise, anything to prove they still have control of the room. But the man who can stay quiet while everyone else scrambles for sound becomes the center of gravity without saying a word. Authority isn't built through volume, it's built through presence. Most men mistake attention for influence, yet attention fades the moment a louder mouth enters. Real influence is invisible. It seeps into people's perception until they start adjusting their tone, their words, their posture, without knowing why. The anatomy of silent authority is simple. Observe, pause, decide. Observation gives you knowledge. Pausing gives you control. Deciding gives you direction. Each moment of restraint builds tension, and tension draws focus. Picture a meeting where everyone is talking fast, fighting to sound smart. At the corner sits one man, still, listening. He doesn't interrupt, doesn't react, doesn't flinch when others challenge him. He waits until the chaos burns itself out, then drops a single line that reframes the entire discussion. No one remembers what the others said, only how the room changed when he finally spoke. That is the architecture of authority. Timing. Noise is cheap. Silence costs energy. It forces you to hold your composure when the ego begs to speak. But once mastered, it becomes a weapon sharper than confrontation, because silence makes people talk too much, reveal too much, try too hard. They start performing for your reaction, and every performer becomes predictable. A calm man is a mirror. When people look at him, they see themselves. The arrogant feel small, the insecure feel exposed, and the wise feel drawn in. His stillness magnifies their own lack of it, and that reflection becomes control. Silent authority is not passive. It's tactical invisibility. You decide what information to reveal, what emotions to show, and when to reveal nothing at all. Mystery amplifies presence because the human mind hates empty space. It fills it with meaning. Let them invent stories about you. Every rumor builds more distance, more curiosity, more weight. But silence only works when it's backed by substance. If your stillness hides confusion, people sense weakness. If it hides conviction, they sense power. That's why silent authority begins long before the room. It begins when you master yourself. Control your impulses, your tone, your pacing, and the world starts to orbit your rhythm. This control has a cost. You lose the casual warmth of constant chatter. You trade comfort for command. People start treating your presence like an event instead of a routine. That distance can feel cold, but it also protects you from being consumed by familiarity. To hold power quietly, you must accept solitude, because the moment your validation depends on noise, your silence dies, and without silence, your authority dissolves. So study how the powerful move. They don't rush to prove. They wait to reveal. They don't argue. They watch others argue themselves into exhaustion. They understand that dominance is not declared, it's felt. Silent authority is the bridge between respect and power. Respect earns attention. Silence turns that attention into tension, and tension, when controlled, becomes gravity. That gravity will soon evolve into something even deeper, the kind of presence that lingers after you've left. That's when respect turns heavy. That's when it becomes the weight of presence. Presence isn't sound, it's gravity. It's the invisible pressure a man creates when he no longer needs to prove anything. The world feels that weight before he even speaks. Some men walk into a room and their energy evaporates, too eager, too reactive, too desperate to be noticed. But others walk in quietly, and the atmosphere tightens. People lower their voices, eyes shift. The air grows heavier. That's not confidence, it's containment. It's the discipline of a man who has learned to hold his energy like a weapon still in its sheath. Presence is born from restraint, not performance. When you stop trying to manage impressions, you start shaping perception. Because people can sense when you're unaffected, when your emotions don't dance to the rhythm of their approval. That kind of calm disturbs them. It makes them second-guess their own balance. Most men want to be seen. Powerful men want to be felt. You can fake words, gestures, even charm, but you can't fake stillness. Stillness is earned, one controlled emotion at a time, one delayed reaction after another, one private victory no one claps for. The more still you become, the more your presence condenses into something dense, magnetic, and heavy. People begin to notice the way you listen, the patience in your eyes, the unspoken judgment in your silence. They start weighing their words before they speak to you, not because you intimidate them, but because you force them to notice themselves. Presence changes social physics. The talkative lose volume around you. The insecure seek your validation, and the dominant ones start to overperform just to test your calm. It's an unspoken battlefield, one where your only weapon is composure. But this kind of power doesn't come without cost. The heavier your presence becomes, the more isolated you feel. You start realizing how few people can breathe comfortably in your silence. They either admire you or avoid you, rarely anything in between. This is the paradox of gravity. The stronger it is, the lonelier its center becomes. Every man who learns to command presence must also learn to bear solitude, because when your company becomes valuable, your availability must decrease. And when your time becomes rare, people start treating your absence as an event. That's the mark of real authority, when your silence speaks longer than your sentences, and your absence holds more influence than your words. Presence, when fully realized, transforms respect into something colder, deeper, a consequence. People don't just admire you, they organize themselves around you, and that shift comes with a quiet ache, a kind of pain that tests how much distance your power can survive. Because every man who learns to hold this kind of gravity will eventually face the next threshold, the pain of detachment. Power isolates, not because others abandon you, but because you begin to see what most people can't, how much of their connection is built on need, not respect. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Detachment begins quietly. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing closeness that doesn't feel mutual. You stop wasting energy on people who drain it and call it friendship. At first it feels freeing. You tell yourself you're becoming stronger, more focused, more independent. But then comes the silence. And inside that silence is the ache of being unseen by choice. Most men think strength means being surrounded, admired, acknowledged. But the truth is, strength often looks like walking alone through conversations that no longer challenge you, relationships that no longer feed you, and opinions that no longer move you. That's when you begin to feel the real cost of control. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing. And losing that need feels like losing a limb, because dependency has been a part of you for years. You've built entire identities around being liked, understood, and validated. When that collapses, you start to feel like you're disappearing. But that disappearance is evolution. It's the mind burning off weakness. Every ounce of discomfort is your old self fighting to survive. The part of you that needed attention, applause, belonging. Detachment kills that version, slowly, ruthlessly, beautifully. You start seeing how many of your decisions were made to keep others comfortable. You realize how often you apologized just to avoid tension, how often you said yes when your gut screamed no. And when you stop doing that, people will notice. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold, distant, arrogant. But that's just their fear talking. Fear of losing the version of you that served them. The pain of detachment is not loneliness. It's withdrawal. You're detoxing from the world's approval, and like any addiction, the first stage is pain. You miss the noise, the attention, the false warmth. But once the craving dies, something stronger replaces it. Clarity. You begin to realize how little you actually need, how much peace there is in doing less, speaking less, explaining less. Detachment strips you bare, but it also makes you untouchable. When you stop needing things from people, they lose the ability to control you, and that's when respect shifts again. It stops being a social exchange and becomes an unspoken law. You don't demand it. You don't ask for it. It's simply given by those who sense your emotional independence. But detachment is only the beginning. Once you learn to stop reacting, you must learn how to use that calm, because power without discipline turns toxic fast. The next evolution is precision, learning the fine art of the law of restraint. Every man wants to be powerful. Few understand that power isn't measured by what you can destroy, but by what you can resist. The world trains you to react, to defend, argue, prove, and justify. Every insult demands a comeback. Every challenge begs for a display. But the moment you respond on impulse, you hand your opponent control. They've pulled you into their rhythm, and once you move on their timing, the game is already lost. Restraint is the discipline of staying still when everything inside you wants to move. It's the refusal to be baited, not because you're weak, but because you understand that reaction is the currency of the powerless. Every time you react, you reveal your emotional map. What triggers you, what scares you, what makes you angry. Once people can predict that, they can steer you like a puppet. But when you master restraint, you erase that map entirely. No one knows where to hit, because nothing obvious moves you. This isn't indifference, it's control. The kind that unnerves people, because it removes their power to manipulate you. The man who can watch chaos unfold without losing his stillness becomes an unshakable force. Restraint is the art of holding the sword, but not swinging it. It's walking away when your ego demands blood. It's saying less when you could easily dominate with words. Because silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Think of restraint like a coiled spring. The tighter you hold it, the more potential it stores. And when you finally act, it's deliberate, precise, devastating. Restraint sharpens instinct. It teaches you when to move, not just how. It separates timing from impulse, patience from hesitation, control from cowardice. Most men can't tell the difference. They mistake restraint for weakness because they fear what they can't understand. The truth is, a restrained man is unpredictable, and unpredictability is the purest form of power. It breeds caution in others, respect in rivals, and curiosity in allies. There's also elegance in restraint, the quiet dominance of someone who knows they could ruin you, but chooses not to. That choice alone creates fear, loyalty, and admiration all at once. Every master of strategy knows this. You win twice, first by not reacting, and again by acting only once. Restraint turns every confrontation into a mirror. It forces the undisciplined to expose themselves while you remain untouchable. It shifts the battlefield from noise to silence, and silence is where the weak crumble. So hold your fire. Let your calm unnerve them, because restraint isn't the opposite of power. It's the proof of it. And once you've learned to command yourself so completely, you'll begin to notice something strange. It's not just what you do that shapes your influence. It's what people believe about you. And that brings us to the next evolution, the mirror of perception. Power is never about truth. It's about perception, the story people tell themselves when they look at you. Every man walks around as an image stitched together by assumptions. People don't see you as you are. They see you as they need you to be. To one person, you're a rival. To another, a mystery. To someone else, a threat. The wise don't fight these projections. They design them. This is where respect begins to turn into power. When you stop defending who you are and start curating what others believe, you move from being known to being defined by choice. That's psychological leverage. Control through illusion, not deception. The mirror of perception works both ways. You look into it and see how the world sees you. Confident, quiet, composed. But the world looks into it and sees something entirely different. Unpredictable, dangerous, possibly superior. The same silence that calms you unsettles them. That's the paradox. What makes you stable makes others unstable. People fear what they can't read. They fill the gaps in your mystery with exaggerated stories. Some flattering, some dark. But all useful, because mystery creates value, and value creates distance. A man who is constantly visible loses shape. He becomes familiar, and familiarity kills fascination. But a man who appears rarely, who speaks selectively, who keeps parts of himself sealed away, becomes a myth. And myths are powerful precisely because no one knows where they end, and the imagination begins. The mistake most men make is trying to control opinion through explanation. They overtalk, overjustify, overexpose, and in doing so, they hand people the tools to define them. The more you explain, the less power you have. The less you explain, the more people project. Perception is a mirror. It reflects exactly what you feed it. If you act like you need to prove something, it reflects insecurity. If you move like you don't owe anyone an explanation, it reflects dominance. And once people believe you don't need their approval, they start giving it freely. That's how influence works. You don't chase attention. You force attention to chase you. Your silence becomes a riddle. Your confidence becomes a rumor. Your distance becomes their obsession. The mirror of perception is not about lying. It's about managing exposure. You decide what parts of yourself the world deserves to see, and what parts remain untouchable. Because when everything about you is available, nothing about you feels valuable. The men who understand this don't compete in the open. They operate through reflection, letting others destroy themselves by misunderstanding them. At this point, respect has evolved into something sharper. You no longer influence through words or presence, but through interpretation. People start shaping themselves around your image, even when you're not there. And that's when you've crossed into the realm of unseen power, power that doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. That's what the next section unveils. The discipline of unseen power. The loudest power is the weakest. It burns bright, draws attention, and fades fast. The strongest power doesn't glow. It pulls. It moves without sound, without announcement, without resistance. Unseen power is not about control over others. It's control over the field. It's influence that moves through tone, rhythm, and timing. The kind that shifts outcomes while leaving no fingerprints behind. Most men crave to be noticed. The rare few learn to disappear, and that's when their reach multiplies. To master unseen power, you must first destroy your hunger for recognition, because attention is gravity in reverse. It pulls you toward the very people you should be leading. Power doesn't chase awareness. It creates awareness in others. They feel your presence even when you're not there. They hesitate before they act, wondering how you'd react. And that hesitation is the shadow of your influence. Unseen power begins when your actions stop needing validation. You start making moves that no one sees, decisions that look ordinary but shift the structure beneath everything. While others fight for spotlight, you move in silence, adjusting, redirecting, planting seeds that bloom long after you've gone. By the time they notice, the landscape has already changed. This discipline demands absolute self-control, because invisibility is not weakness. It's protection. When you reveal nothing, nothing can be used against you. When you stop explaining, they stop knowing where to hit. That's when power becomes untouchable. The world is addicted to exposure. Every move posted, every thought shared, every emotion displayed. But exposure is corrosion. The more people see of you, the less they value you. The more predictable you become, the less influence you have. Unseen power thrives in contrast. The mystery of a man who's always 2 steps ahead, but never fully visible. You lead by absence, not instruction. Your silence pressures people to think deeper, to question themselves. They begin to self-correct around you, not out of fear, but instinct. That's influence at its highest level, when control no longer looks like control. But there's a danger here. The same stillness that gives you power can also trap you in isolation. The world will start to see you as distant, detached, maybe even ruthless. You must decide if that's a price you're willing to pay. Because unseen power isn't about being loved, it's about being effective. The disciplined man knows this balance. He doesn't need to prove superiority. He simply operates from it. He leaves no emotional fingerprints, no digital trail, no visible claim to dominance, just results. Quiet, consistent, irreversible results. That's the discipline of unseen power. Influence without exposure, control without noise. But there's one final edge to sharpen. One final test that separates the powerful from the consumed, the ability to hold power without being destroyed by it. And that's where the story ends. The final warning. Power is beautiful until it starts to believe its own reflection. At first it's discipline, awareness, control. Then slowly it turns into something colder, certainty. And certainty is how power begins to rot. You'll feel it long before it shows. The calm that once protected you starts to harden into pride. You stop listening, stop adjusting, stop questioning. You mistake fear for respect, obedience for loyalty, and silence for agreement. That's when power stops serving you and starts using you. Every empire collapses from the inside, and every man who loses himself to control does it the same way. He forgets he's still human. He stops feeling the edge, stops doubting his own timing, stops fearing consequence. He believes he can't be touched, and that illusion destroys him faster than any enemy ever could. The truth is, power doesn't corrupt everyone. It just reveals who was pretending to be good. The quiet, patient man becomes cruel. The strategic thinker becomes paranoid. The stoic becomes numb. Because once you taste command, restraint starts to feel like weakness again. And that's how the cycle restarts. If you ever reach the point where people hesitate before telling you the truth, you're already losing it. If your silence stops being a choice and becomes a wall, you're no longer in control of your image. It's controlling you. Power is supposed to make you sharper, not heavier. It should refine your perception, not bury your empathy. The moment it feeds your ego instead of your clarity, it's no longer power. It's addiction dressed as dominance. So the warning is simple. Stay dangerous, but stay human. Stay calculated, but never cold. Never forget that the goal of power was never to rise above others. It was to rise above yourself. Because in the end, there is no crown heavy enough to fill the emptiness of self-worship. And the men who forget that always end the same way. Not defeated, not destroyed, but quietly hollow. Final line. Power doesn't end when others stop fearing you. It ends when you stop fearing yourself.